Okay, well, my name's Sarah Lloyd and this is Carly Smith-Huggins. We're both based at the Museum of Natural History, and we're going to represent the Joint Museums Youth Forum project, which is a group of people who work with teenagers and young people across the collections. And we were put together as a group to establish 4 independent youth forum groups. We work as a group for many different reasons, but the idea is that as a group we would be able to support each other. We'd be able to try a number of independent approaches and evaluate those. We'd also have a sort of sense of accountability that if we have regular meetings and one of us hasn't done something, then it becomes very obvious. So we're accountable to each other, and we think as a group we're more likely to make progress because of that accountability. So I'm going to talk very briefly about the logistics of some of the youth forum groups, and then Carly's going to talk a little bit about the impact of those groups. So Pitt Rivers Museum, the youth forum group, is under the direction of Catherine Rose, and Catherine has taken the plunge by identifying a specific event and approaching a specific school. So she worked towards an evening takeover event with Matthew Arnold School, and that enabled them to get underway very, very quickly and have a two-way flow of collaboration from the start. The Ashmolean, correct me if I'm wrong, please step in, they had a different approach. The idea was to work on programming for young people with a view to distilling the group from that, with no particular project in mind, but more of a focus on getting the group together and seeing what came out of that. The Museum of the History of Science, their approach was to identify a particular collection and a particular task and invite people with a particular interest to get involved with that collection and task. Our approach was to work with a group that we'd been working with for a little while and use that as a starting point to put together a youth forum group. So for 2 years in the run-up to this project, we've been working with young people on a Saturday morning who'd elected to come into the museum of their own in their own free time, and we felt from that we had a core group which we could add to make the youth forum. So we were all at slightly different stages and slightly different approaches. There is lots of overlap between the approaches and lots of contrasts as well. There's the Pitt Rivers event. This gives a little bit more of a flavour of how that came together. It involved behind the scenes work. It involved planning, marketing material, and running the events in the evening. I think I might skip the video actually and go straight on to the next bit. So that's what happens, right? So our group at the Museum of the History of Science, the Museum of Natural History, was the Museum Dodo crew. They came up with their own name and their own logo, and I'll talk a little bit about what we did, who came, how we put that group together, why do people stay in the group, why do people leave the group, and what we would do differently if we were going to do that again. I'm going to turn over my notes to make sure I keep up with what I'm saying. So, when we put together the group, we worked on our existing Saturday morning group. Now, Gemma, on the right-hand side there, is a typical member of the Saturday morning investigator group. She had a particular interest in cats that stemmed from her pet cat, and she wanted to come into the museum and investigate that further, and did that over successive Saturdays for a 10-week period. And she was part of a group of 8 young people who did their own individual projects, got to know the museum, had some interaction with each other, but really were driven by their interest in the collection. We also marketed to school groups, and we wanted to step away from the route through schools and teachers because we wanted it to be a more informal group. But when school groups were visiting and doing other activities in the museum, we made sure that that material was available for them to pick up and take away. And so we spent some of our money that we were allocated on producing postcards that we could hand out in the museum or have around in the museum. And we also used local websites. And we found, in fact, our own website was actually the most responded to. Other websites that we used weren't mentioned when we asked people how they found out about us. But there was some information on the museum website. And the group was formed, really. This is not everybody in the group. We've got a regular group of about 12 people. We've had 17 people come and go at different times, but there's a core group of 12. The idea was that we'd start off with about 12 and end up with about 6, but we've got 12 and they keep coming back. So they are our core group. There's a real mixture of ages. We've got a couple as young as 14, and we've got one person who's 19. Most of them are at school. There's one homeschool student, there's one person in employment, there's one person who's unemployed, and most of them local. We've got one girl who comes from Kent every month to come to the meetings, but most of them are kind of within Oxfordshire, so Oxfordshire and very local environment. One of the activities we did of one of the Saturday mornings is make a video with Scott's help. So perhaps to tell you a little bit more about the group, I'll show you the video that they made and put together. They scripted and acted it out. I think they'd be quite embarrassed if they knew we were all watching it, but I will... there's kind of several different mouses on here, so just excuse me a second. Is it on the desktop? All right, okay. So they're known as the Dodo Crew, and this video is presenting the Dodo Crew.
The Dodo Crew is a group of quirky individuals who meet once a month at the Oxford University Museum of Natural History. We are a group of 14 to 19-year-olds who give a younger influence on the way the museum is presented to the public.
In our monthly meetings, we take part in many exciting activities, such as going behind the scenes to see special museum objects and cockroach handling with the public. A bonus of being part of the Dodo Crew is our exclusive tours of part of the museum hidden from general view. For instance, the entomology department, where our cockroach friends live, the spirit store with hundreds of specimens, some of which were collected by Darwin himself, and the earth collection, where the specimens are carefully prepared to go on display. We also plan events for the public, presenting new findings, activities such as animal handling with the public, and treasure hunts around the museum.
I think the ability to plan events and engage with the public is something that's really exciting, that we don't get to do outside of something like the Dodo Crew.
It's a very unique experience because we get to see other things that people don't see. So as a visitor, you'll just see stuff around the museum, but we get to see stuff behind the scenes and how things are displayed as well.
One cool thing we do is we get to meet professionals and learn more about their jobs and stuff that we could possibly do.
Well, it's really great because you get to spend some time with a lovely group of people and learn more about natural history, particularly through handling objects that might not be available to the public.
So the things they like, the reasons they come back, they get to do special things that the public don't get a chance to do. And that's not just engaging with the collections, but the people who work with the collections. This is a group on taxidermy workshop, and I think they've got the inside of a partridge on the desk, and they're assembling the outside of the partridge. They get to engage with the public, particularly the older members of the group. They really enjoy engaging with the public. And feeling special. I think the one thing they all identify, they like being a team. Designing the t-shirts is a really big deal for them, and identifying people that they have things in common with. They felt really that was a really good opportunity. I'm sure Carly will talk more about that. So on reflection, a year on, now we've been doing the Dodo Crew every Saturday, and not every first Saturday of each month. What are reflections? What would we do differently? When we asked the group what they didn't like about the sessions, they were quite reluctant to share that. And one of the things that it became apparent that sometimes the group dynamics were a bit strange, and if we were going to do it again, I think we'd increase the flexibility to manage the group slightly differently, have some things that we did collectively, and then other things where we could spiral off and have groups that crystallise together a bit better to work on projects in a more flexible way. And that may be working more regularly, because we found once a month it goes by very quickly, and it's very difficult to maintain the momentum if you're meeting once a month. So thinking about the format and incorporating flexibility that enabled you to manage the group, and also the way they communicate with each other. And also, we're not really sure how to manage changes, how when new people come in. At the moment, our group are very receptive to new people, but that might not always be the case. And I think it's important for us to get our heads around how we manage new people and how we encourage people to leave in a positive way, rather than just kind of drift off and decide not to come anymore. So the group dynamics and how we might manage that a bit more effectively, I think, are probably next steps. But the Dodo crew has many impacts, and Collie's going to talk a little bit more about that.
I just want to say, how much time do I have? 4 minutes. Okay, I'll try and summarise the many impacts that the youth forum has in 4 to 5 minutes. So I've kind of broken it down into 2 sections, so the impact on the young people and the impact on the museum. So I believe that the museum is a really accessible and enriching and inspiring place. I myself was on a museum youth forum in the past, and for me this project was very exciting for that reason. So I'm just going to make sure I can press that. So the first 2, which I'm going to pop up there, were for me the most important when I was on the youth forum. So we've got increasing self-confidence and self-esteem. So the group is all about expressing yourself, and we give them lots of opportunity to tell us their thoughts and ideas. So from doing that, they're being able to kind of bring their ideas and see them happen, which is very exciting. And I think part of becoming an adult is kind of realising your independence and kind of being able to do something, and you thought of that idea, is such a great thing when you're a young person. So the next one, opportunity to have their say in shaping something in your local community, kind of feeds into that as well. So the next one, skills development. So from coming to the sessions, the young people gain a new experience each time. They're getting to meet all sorts of people and learn about lots of different things. And from seeing these, and as you saw one of the participants in the video said about meeting professionals, it's kind of having a real impact on them, because they're kind of thinking about their own future and their own careers and allowing themselves to see themselves as adults in a way. So developing relationships, social inclusion. So they quite enjoy coming back to the group with the same people. They've formed lots of friendships within the group, but they begin to trust each other, and they start kind of stretching out to other groups. But it's kind of integrating very slowly. And some of the participants were quite reluctant. When we say reluctant, they just talked at people rather than actually being part of the group. One of the members of the group, when asked what she got out of the youth forum, said she's become a better socialiser and a better team player. And for a 14-year-old to realise that about themselves, I think is pretty amazing. So now she's much more willing to listen to people and to engage. Okay, so we've got encouraging aspirations. So I had a particular example for this one. Is one of our museum researchers, Imran, came to give a talk to the group, and something very unexpected came out of it for me. I'm always worried about when they ask questions, because you never know what they're going to ask. But they did ask some good questions. One of them was, how did you get your job? What grades did you get at school? And Imran was quite honest with them, and he said, I got a C. That's not good enough to be a scientist, is it? And it was, because apparently Imran has 2 degrees, which they went, oh, fancy that. So 3, yeah, there you go, 3. And they were like, oh, fancy. So I think that kind of barrier between young people, as they're known, and adults is kind of, we're breaking that down by allowing them to have these conversations with real professionals and helping them to visualise themselves as maybe being that one day themselves. Okay. Sense of belonging, part of community. So as Sarah said, when we recruited the group, we tried to pick people from a random selection. We didn't want lots of people who knew each other already, because we think that would change the dynamics of the group. And as Sarah said, lots of people did, a few people, did leave because of the strong dominant characters in the group. what I quite like about this group is that they see themselves as people who like learning, and that's something that they're in their personal interest. And what's also good about this group is that perhaps at school this is not appreciated by their peers, or sometimes even their family, who apparently prefer ice skating. They kind of can be themselves, and they're not embarrassed to kind of share their passion and knowledge. Okay, opportunity to be in a non-traditional learning environment. So I think this is basically a similar thing. You're in a place where you can share your passion with people who are interested in the same things as you, but it's not at school or work. And the last one, fun. Of course, last but not least, a big part of being part of this group is fun. We try to make it as fun as possible because we want them to come back, of course. Impact on the museum. So the first one being providing a youth perspective. So as Sarah said, we ran the investigators, and that was a different kind of group that were invited through school. But one of the things about this group is that it's have a sustained kind of group that come here through their own choice. They're coming not through school, not through their parents telling to come, but they come because they want to. And they help us to kind of come up with great ideas. We get their perspective on those. So as I say, I was on a museum youth forum with Kathy Clow, who works in the Pit Rivers. God knows how we both came to be here, but we did. And what was quite nice is that we came up with a project which is about taking museum objects to the pub. And we were over 18, by the way. So that came to the Museum of Natural History with the Goes for a Pint project. Okay, I'm being targeted programming. Again, we're learning a lot from working with young people about what the kind of things they actually like, and they're all very different, like every audience that we have, but we're learning a lot from that. Contributed to social inclusion and young people's learning and development. So although we're working with a really small group of 12 people, we feel that we're making a great impact on their learning development, and also enabling them to make friends and get to know people who are like them. And a lot of them clearly aspire to one day have a career in science. And I feel like as a museum, we're a very unique place that has the ability to help people shape their lives by using our kind of staff, museum, collections, and I think that that's something very unique that we have to offer. Work with informal group on a sustained basis, like I was saying. We don't really get many opportunities to do that, and I know that Susan and Nicola do that quite a lot in what they do, but it's quite nice to work with a group of young people on a regular basis. So I'll just go back. And we kind of broke down how we think youth forums kind of the different stages of integrating a youth forum into a museum that Sarah and I have been talking about. I'll just quickly mention that, if that's okay. So the first stage we think is not mentioned. So the group is kind of forming and not many people are aware of it happening. It's there, but it's kind of not mentioned amongst the museums. Then we have mentioned and tokenistic. So this is when people know about the youth forum, but they're kind of used as an idea to gain something for the museum. So they're not getting much out of that experience. It's more the museum's getting something out of it. Then we've got mentioned and actioned, which is the stage that Sarah and I, after a year, believe that we're now at. And that's working on something to kind of recognise the group as what they are, like what they bring to the museum, and kind of utilising that in some way so that it's mutually beneficial. And then there's mentioned, action, valued, which is the stage that we would like to go on to. And this is really valuing the group for their opinions and their thoughts and their ideas, and doing something worthwhile and beneficial for both parties. So I'll stop talking now.